You'd be hard-pressed to find a name that once carried more weight in British trucking than Foden, a badge you'd spot proudly crawling up hills with steel beams strapped to its back, battling rain on the M62, or hauling turbines up the Pennines. For decades, the Foden name stood for reliability, proper engineering, and trucks that could take a beating and ask for more. But in the late 70s and early 80s, something changed. Not overnight, not with a bang, but with the slow, choking death of something hidden under the cab: the engine. More specifically, the two-stroke diesel engine that promised the future and delivered disaster. At the time, the industry was under pressure. European brands were marching in, regulations were shifting, and fuel efficiency was becoming a major battleground. Foden, trying to stay ahead, made a gamble, one that looked clever on paper. Instead of sticking with proven Cummins or Gardner power plants, they decided to go with something radically different: the DAF-based two-stroke diesel, dubbed the Foden FD two-stroke. This engine was designed to be compact, lightweight, powerful for its size, and perfect for rigid chassis trucks. But here's the problem: it wasn't ready, not even close. Two-strokes were already a rarity in British lorries. Most fleets and fitters were used to four-stroke diesels with predictable behavior and rugged maintenance cycles. A two-stroke required different timing, different fueling, different thinking, but Foden pushed ahead. They slapped it into their S10s and early Alphas, hoping it would revolutionize the market. What followed instead was a wave of mechanical heartbreak. First, there were the reliability issues. The FD two-stroke ran hot, very hot. It needed proper cooling and careful handling. But this was Britain. We're talking about trucks hauling up wet hills in Wales, crawling through the tight streets of Birmingham, or sitting in M25 traffic. These engines weren't made for that kind of punishment. Overheating became common, cracked heads, warped components, turbo issues. Mechanics started dreading the sight of one rolling into the yard. Then came the noise. It was loud. Not just lorry engine loud, clattering, rattling, tin can on fire loud. Drivers complained about the drone, the vibration through the cab, the screaming pitch at high RPM. And back then, cabs didn't exactly come with sound insulation or air suspension. Long shifts became a test of endurance, not just physically, but mentally. Worse still, parts were scarce and training was poor. Most fitters had no idea how to service a two-stroke properly. Oil changes had to be more frequent, fueling had to be precise, and if anything went wrong, good luck finding a dealer that stocked the bits. Word spread fast through the haulage community, and when word spreads, trust dies. Operators started ripping them out, literally. Some fleets pulled the engines and repowered the trucks with tried and tested Cummins units just to keep them running. Others sold them off at rock-bottom prices just to get them out of the yard. Meanwhile, Foden doubled down. They kept backing the two-stroke, convinced it was just a teething issue. But it wasn't. It was a design flaw, a miscalculation, and a brand-destroying decision. What stings most is how out of character it was. Foden had always been known for durability. The old 8-wheelers with Gardner engines ran forever. Farmers, builders, heavy hauliers, they trusted Foden because it was bomb-proof. But this was a rushed experiment masquerading as innovation. It alienated the very people who'd built the brand from the ground up: the drivers, the mechanics, the fleet buyers. And once that trust was gone, it didn't come back. Even when they moved on to better models like the 4000 series and brought back more reliable powertrains, the damage had been done. The brand was now seen as risky, unreliable, a gamble rather than a guarantee. By the mid-80s, Foden had lost significant market share. The European giants were moving in with more refined, efficient, and quieter trucks: Scania, Volvo, MAN, even DAF. The very company that supplied the bones of that doomed two-stroke was eating into their UK sales. What's cruel is that Foden wasn't the only company to take risks, but unlike others, they bet the house on a single engine and lost. And when you're a British brand already fighting against imports, economic headwinds, and corporate restructuring, that kind of failure isn't just technical, it's existential. The FD engine isn't remembered with fondness. There's no cult following, no forums waxing nostalgic. It's the kind of thing old mechanics groan about and former drivers curse under their breath. It's the reason some operators swore off Foden altogether. And it's the moment where things turned, where a titan of British trucking lost its footing and began sliding towards the shadows. After the smoke cleared from the two-stroke disaster, Foden tried to claw its way back. They moved fast to reintroduce reliable power plants, like the Cummins L10 and Caterpillar units. These engines gave buyers a bit of reassurance. Finally, something they could trust again. And to be fair, Foden's later models weren't bad at all. The 3000 and 4000 series had their loyal fans. They were well built, had decent cabs, and with a proper engine under the floor, could haul just as well as any Euro import. But the stain had already set in, and the timing couldn't have been worse. The British trucking market was changing fast. European trucks were flooding in with better fuel economy, air-sprung cabs, and sleeker styling. Operators who once bought British out of loyalty were now looking across the channel and not looking back. Foden found itself stuck between a shrinking domestic base and rising competition that never seemed to make the same blunders. It didn't help that their ownership situation had become a mess. Foden had been sold to the giant American firm PACCAR, the same company behind Kenworth and Peterbilt. You'd think that'd be a good thing. A cash-rich parent company with experience in global trucking sounds like salvation. But in reality, it meant Foden lost a bit of its soul. They were no longer truly British in their direction. Design decisions, investment priorities, and product strategy all shifted to fit the PACCAR mold. Soon, Foden lorries were little more than rebadged DAFs with a British badge and a Union Jack on the brochure. By the early 2000s, it was clear the end was near. Foden had become a niche brand, mostly appealing to operators who wanted something a bit different, or who just had a soft spot for the name. But the market had moved on. Fuel prices were rising, emission standards were tightening, and big fleets were favoring manufacturers that offered long-term support, telematics, and global parts networks. Foden simply couldn't keep up. Then came the final blow. In 2006, PACCAR announced they were shutting it down. Just like that. After more than 150 years of engineering, haulage, and British transport history, Foden was done. No more orders, no more production. The factory lights dimmed, the doors closed, and the chapter ended. Quietly, without fuss. But the wound left by that two-stroke fiasco never really healed. It haunted the brand like a ghost in the gearbox. You see, trust in the haulage world is earned slowly, over decades, over miles, over hard graft. And once you break that trust, you rarely get a second chance. The FD engine didn't just ruin a model, it tainted the badge. It made buyers question Foden's judgment, and it gave competitors an easy pitch. You want reliable? You want proven? You want something that won't melt its head gasket at the first sign of a hill? Then don't buy Foden. It's tragic really, because the men and women at Foden, the engineers, the line workers, the designers, they weren't the problem. They were proud, skilled, and doing the best they could with what they were given. But somewhere up the chain, someone made a choice. A gamble on a shiny new engine that looked good on paper but was built on sand, and the ripple effect of that decision lasted decades. There are still a few of those old Foden two-stroke trucks out there. Most have long been scrapped, but a handful survive in yards and museums. Not because they were great, but because they tell a story, a cautionary tale, a moment where British trucking could have gone a different way, but didn't. And here's the kicker. Foden was never just a truck builder, it was part of the culture, a name you saw on every A road, in every muddy quarry, at every motorway cafe from Dover to Dundee. It stood shoulder to shoulder with ERF, Leyland and Atkinson as part of the backbone of British logistics. But one engine, one catastrophic misstep, shook that foundation. It sent cracks through the legacy. And the irony? Foden never needed to take that risk. They had loyal buyers, solid engineering, a reputation earned through sweat and steel. But in chasing a shortcut to innovation, they forgot the golden rule of haulage. Dependability beats novelty every time. The FD two-stroke wasn't just a mechanical failure, it was the moment Foden stopped listening to the road, to the mechanics, and to the drivers. And once that bond broke, everything else followed.